The night Duke stopped. You don't remember deciding to walk that road. You remember realizing you shouldn't have. The map said it was the fastest way out. Old asphalt, no traffic, straight line through trees. You trusted that. Duke walked ahead of you at first. No slash, normal pace, tail low but relaxed. That mattered. Duke never relaxes in places that feel wrong. He tightens, he pulls, he checks behind you. Tonight, he didn't. You were already telling yourself this was good. That silence meant distance. That distance meant safety. That's when Duke slowed. Not suddenly. Not like something jumped at him. He simply shortened his stride. One step, then another. Then he stopped. You didn't pull the leash. You didn't say his name. You watched his body. Ears up, neck stiff. Breathing shallow, controlled. That breathing hit you first. Duke pants when HES stressed. He growls when HES threatened. He does this only when something is close enough to matter, but quiet enough to wait. You felt the pressure then, behind your eyes, inside your chest, like the air had weight. You scanned the road. Fog hanging low, not moving. Trees are still. No insects. No night birds. That absence made your skin crawl. You crouched beside Duke. Your hand hovered near his chest, but didn't touch. His heart was racing. His body washed. That contradiction doesn't happen by accident. You whispered his name once. He didn't look at you. That's when you knew this wasn't about fear. It was about direction. You followed his gaze down the road. Nothing. Just asphalt vanishing into fog. You told yourself instincts misfire. That fatigue creates ghosts. But Duke had been through worse. Gunfire. Explosions. Crowds screaming. None of that made him stop like this. Stopping meant calculation. You stood and took one step forward. Duke didn't move. You took another. The leash went tight, not pulling you back, anchoring you. That was the moment the night changed. Not with sound, not with movement, with refusal. You stepped off the road. The ground felt strong immediately. Too even, too firm, as if it had been walked the same way too many times. Duke followed reluctantly. His head stayed low, nose working but not tracking scent. He wasn't reading smell. He was reading space. That's when the smell hit you. Not dirt, not rot, plastic, paper, something sealed. You saw the tape, reflective, clean, tied to a branch at shoulder height. Then another, each one the same distance apart, not marking danger, marking passage. You stood between them and felt something close around you. Not physically, structurally. You weren't in the forest anymore. You were in a corridor. Duke growled once. Low, short. You froze. You listened. At first nothing. Then you heard it. Paper. A slow, careful page turn. Your brain rejected it before your body did. Paper doesn't belong here. Duke's ears rotated, tracking the sound with precision. You couldn't tell where it came from. That scared you more than the sound itself. Then you saw the car. Black, unmarked, parked just beyond the tree line. No engine noise. No lights. It looked new, wrongly new. Too clean for this road. You didn't approach. You observed. The windows weren't reflective. They absorbed light. Duke stepped forward. His growl changed. Not warning. Anger. turned sharp. You tightened your grip on the leash. Your pulse spiked. Duke only gets angry when rules are broken. Whatever sat in that car didn't feel alive, but it didn't feel empty either. You took one step back. The car didn't move. That was the message. It didn't need to. You retreated into the trees. Duke kept his eyes on the car until it disappeared behind fog. Not afraid. Tracking. You reached a shallow ditch. Mud and standing water. You crossed carefully, then doubled back along the edge. Old habit. You knelt to check the ground. Your prints were there. Duke's too. Then you saw the third set. Parallel. Perfect. No drag. No hesitation. You pressed your fingers into one. Still warm. Your stomach dropped. Someone was walking with you, without being there. Duke stared into the trees, not searching, focusing, like he was looking at something that didn't want to be seen. You moved again, faster now. You found the shed by accident. Utility structure. Old. Forgotten. The door was open. That was a mistake. You entered anyway. Duke hesitated. That hesitation scared you more than anything outside. Inside smelled clean, disinfected. There was a folding chair facing the wall. A small metal mount screwed above it. No camera. Recently removed. You found the clipboard on the floor. Face down. Boxes. Check marks. No names. Categories. Subject. Companion animal. Exposure. One handwritten line. Observation complete. No intervention required. Your hands shook. Not fear. Rage. The town was an accident. Neither were you. You folded the paper and put it away. Not to keep it. To prove you were still real. Outside something clicked. Twice. Recording. Duke whimpered. That sound cut straight through you. Your armor cracked. Just a little. You left before permission change. No running. No noise. At the ridge. You looked back once. The car was still there. A small red light blinked. Once. Twice. Logging. You turned away. Not brave. Careful. Because systems don't chase. They wait. And they always expect you to move first. What watches you leave? You didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Because sleep requires permission. You sat with your back against the wall. Duke pressed into your leg, both of you listening to a world that refused to explain itself. The forest never fully quieted, but it never moved either. No wind through branches. No animals returning after danger passed. Just suspension. That's how you knew the observation hadn't ended. Only change distance. At dawn, fog lifted in layers, not naturally, segmented, like someone pulling back curtains one strip at a time. You waited for sound to come back with the light. It didn't. Duke stood first, slow, deliberate. He sniffed the air once, then looked at you. That look wasn't asking. It was informing. You backed fast, not efficiently, urgently. You left nothing behind that could identify you as intentional. No track, no markers. The shed stayed where it was. That mattered. Systems don't like when you remove evidence. They like when you pretend it doesn't exist. You followed the tree line instead of the road, keeping distance without creating patterns. Duke stayed close now, not leading, guarding. You reached the overlook just as the sun cleared the ridge. The road below looked harmless again. Empty. Normal. That scared you more than the car. You scanned for tire tracks. None. The asphalt was untouched, as if nothing had ever been there. You checked the mud near the ditch. Your prints were gone. Duke still. Only the third set remained. Perfect. Unfaded. You didn't touch them this time. You backed away slowly. That was the first mistake. Duke reacted instantly. He snapped his head toward the woods behind you. Hackles up, body forward. Not fear. Defense. You heard it then. Not footsteps. Cloth. Soft friction against bark. Something moving carefully enough to avoid sound, but not enough to avoid notice. You shifted your weight. The sound stopped. You didn't breathe. Duke didn't blink. Seconds stretched until they lost meaning. Then the sound resumed. Closer. You stepped sideways, never breaking eye line with the trees. That's when the voice came. Not loud, not threatening. Professional. Marcus Hale. Please remain where you are. Your blood ran cold. You never gave your name. Duke growled. Deep. Controlled. You didn't answer. The voice continued. We're not here to detain you. That word mattered. Detain implies process. Rules. Paperwork. You tightened your grip on the leash. We observed an anomaly, the voice said. You intersected with it. Intersected. Not witnessed. Not survived. Intersected. You stepped back again. The trees shifted. Not visually, spatially. Like depth was being adjusted. You saw him then. Not hiding. Not approaching. Standing exactly where you'd been looking before. Black jacket. No insignia. Hands visible. Composture. Behind him, nothing. No team. No vehicle. That absence screamed louder than a squad. Duke bared his teeth. The man looked down at him, not afraid. Curious. Impressive conditioning, he said. Is he tier certified? You moved without thinking. One step forward. Enough to break symmetry. The man raised a hand, nodding surrender. In pause. Word documenting residual behavior, he said. You're free to go. Free. That word landed wrong. Free implies release. Release implies ownership. Do plunge. Just a snap. A warning. The man didn't flinch. Behind him, the forest shimmered. Not visually. Structurally. Like heat distortion without heat. You backed away fast now. No stealth. No courtesy. Duke stayed between you and the man, growing louder with each step. You hit the trail hard. Branches snapped. Breath burned. You didn't look back. You didn't need to. You could feel the attention stretch, then retract, like a camera zooming out. Miles later, you reached the abandoned service road. Your truck sat where you left it, untouched. Too untouched. No dust disturbed. No animal prints around it. Duke refused to approach. He planted his feet and leaned back. You scanned the vehicle. Undercarriage clean. Door seals intact. But the radio was on. Static. Low. Consistent. You turned it off. It turned itself back on. That was enough. You cut the battery. Silence returned. You loaded Duke in first. Hands shaking now. Not from adrenaline. From clarity. This wasn't pursuit. It was assessment. You drove without stopping. Avoided highways. Avoided towns. By nightfall, you crossed into a county that shouldn't exist. No signage. No cell service. Your GPS flickered, then reset. Blank. Duke finally laid down, exhausted, trusting. That trust hurt more than fear, because now you knew you weren't being hunted. You were being studied, and studies don't end when you escape. They end when conclusions are drawn. When the pattern breaks, you crossed 3 counties before the road finally changed texture, not visually. In resistance, the steering wheel vibrated differently. The tires hummed like they were passing over something layered beneath the asphalt. Duke lifted his head. One ear rotated back. That was enough. You slowed without braking. Let the engine drag you down. The GPS stayed blank, but the clock jumped forward. 6 minutes. No acceleration. No reason. You marked it mentally. Time skips are never random. They're adjustments. You didn't stop in the town. You never planned to. But towns have gravity. Streetleton came on as you passed the exit. One by one. Delayed. Like a wave following you. You kept driving. The mirrors stayed clear. Too clear. No headlights behind you. No reflections from passing cars. Just empty road and your own face staring back. You felt Duke tense. Not drow. Not Bart. Brace. The radio turned on again. You hadn't reconnected the battery. Static first, then breathing. Slow. Measured. Not panicked. Someone listening to themselves breathe. You reached for the dial. The sound stopped before you touched it. A voice replaced it. This route is inefficient. You didn't respond. Talking confirms receipt. The voice continued anyway. You are deviating from optimal recovery corridors. Recovery, not extraction, not assistance. You tightened your grip on the wheel. Duke stared at the dashboard, eyes fixed, tracking something you couldn't see. We don't require compliance, the voice said. Only consistency. The clock jumped again, 2 minutes backward. Your knuckles went white. You took the next exit. Not because it made sense, because systems hate unpredictability. The road narrowed immediately. No shoulder. Trees pressed close. You killed the headlights. Let moonlight guide you. The truck rolled quietly now. Too quietly. The engine sounded dampened, filtered. Duke shifted his weight forward. Low stance. Ready to bolt. You smelled it then. Ozone. Burnt metal. Rain without ray. You stopped the truck. Didn't open the door. Didn't move. The forest ahead was dark. It was flat. Depthless. Like a projection. The voice returned. Closer. Not through the radio. From outside. You intersected again, it said. Same voice as before. Same cadence. Same calm. Different position. You scanned left. Nothing. Right. Movement. A silhouette stepped out between 2 trees. Same jacket. Same posture. But something was off. He didn't disturb the ground. No leaves shifted. No sound of boots. He was anchored to the frame, not the space. Duke exploded. Snarling. Pulling. You barely held him. The man stopped, tilting his head, like a technician examining faulty equipment. This asset shows elevated resistance, he said. Asset. You opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Real air. You stepped out slowly. Hands visible. Not surrender. Control. Say what you want, you said. But don't call him that. The man smiled. Not mockery. Confirmation. You've anthropomorphized the variable, he said. That's common. You felt something shift behind you. Not presence. Absence. The forest behind the truck blinked. Gone for half a second. Returned misaligned. You back toward the truck. The man raised his hand again. That same pause gesture. Behind him, more figures resolve. Not walkie. Loading in. 3, 5. Different heights. Identical posture. All facing you. Duke lunged. The leash snapped. He hit the ground running. Straight at them. You shouted his name. He didn't slow. The figures reacted instantly. Not defensive. Procedural. One stepped forward. Extended something. A pulse rippled through the air. Not sound. Pressure. Duke yelped mid-stride. Crumpled. Hit the ground hard. Your world narrowed. Everything went quiet. You fired without aiming. 2 shots. Center mass. The rounds passed through the figure. No resistance. No blood. Like shooting fog held in shape. The figures didn't advance. They adjusted. The one in front looked down at Duke. Neurological overload, it said. Temporary. You were already moving. Drop to your knees. Hands on Duke. He was breathing. Fast. Shallow. Eyes unfocused. Alive. Barely. You felt it then. Fear. Unfiltered. Not for yourself. For him. The man spoke again. You are no longer an observer, he said. You are a contaminant. You scooped Duke up. Didn't look at them. Didn't threaten. Didn't bargain. You ran. Back into the forest. No plan. No route. Branches tore at you. Roots stripped you. You fell once. Hard. Rolled. Shielded Duke with your body. The forest corrected behind you. Snapping back into place. You didn't stop until your lungs burned raw. When you finally collapsed, dawn was breaking again. Same pale light. Same artificial calm. Duke stirred. Wind softly. You held him tight. Shaking now. Not from cold. From rage. From understanding. They didn't want you dead. They wanted you cataloged. And Duke was the anomaly. The thing that didn't fit. Which meant one thing. Next time, they wouldn't observe. They would remove. The variable they can't predict. You didn't move for a long time. Morning had arrived, but it didn't bring relief. Just visibility. Duke lay against your chest, breathing unevenly. Each rise of his ribs felt like borrowed time. You counted them. Not seconds. Breath. That's how you know fear has settled in, when numbers feel safer than thoughts. His eyes fluttered open briefly, unfocused, confused, then closed again. You ran a quick check with your hands, spine, legs, skull. No blood. No fractures you could feel. That pulse they hit him with wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to interrupt. Systems don't destroy what they don't understand. They isolate it. You stayed in the trees until the sun climbed higher. Not because you were hiding. Because you were listening. No engines. No footsteps. No voices. Nothing that wanted you back. That was worse. You moved when Duke stirred on his own, weak but responsive. You half carried him, half supported, keeping your pace slow. Predictable movement draws attention. Erratic movement creates noise. You chose tired consistency. The terrain sloped downward into a dry riverbed. Rock and dust. Nothing to interfere with tracking, but also nothing to hide anomalies. You followed it anyway. Duke looked now. barely, leaning into you, trusting without question. That trust tightens something in your chest. You reached a culvert by mid-morning. Concrete, old, cracked, graffiti layered so thick it looked geological. You took shelter inside. First thing you noticed was temperature. Cooler, stable. Second thing was sound. Your breathing echoed. Duke's did not. That discrepancy mattered. You set him down gently, checked his eyes again. Focus now. Pain, yes. Confusion, fading. You pulled out the old field notebook, not to write, to ground yourself. Patterns only reveal themselves when you slow down. They used your name. They knew your route preferences. They didn't pursue after contact. But Duke triggered escalation. Not you. That detail Woodland let go. You replayed the moment in your head. The lunge, the pulse, the immediate classification. Asset shows elevated resistance. Resistance to what? Commands, signals, prediction. Duke was trained for what they were doing. No implants, no tech, no conditioning beyond instinct and bond, which meant the variable was static. It was emergent. That's when it clicked. Duke wasn't reacting to them. He was reacting before then, not to presence, to intent. You'd seen it before, overseas. Dogs reacting to ambushes that hadn't happened yet. Not clairvoyance. Pattern recognition so deep it looked like magic. Except this washed human patterning. This was system behavior. Duke could feel when a decision had already been made. You looked down at him. He looked back. Tail didn't move. Ears relaxed. Eyes steady. He trusted the space. That told you more than any sensor ever could. You waited another hour. Then you felt it again. Not sound, not movement, compression, like the air itself was being sampled. You pressed flat against the covert wall, pulled Duke in close, slowed your breathing. The sensation passed. No aftermath, no contact, just confirmation. They weren't tracking location anymore. They were tracking response. You moved at dusk, kept to low ground, avoided open lines. No roads, no straight paths. Duke walked stronger now, still limping slightly but alert. Every time he paused, you stopped. Every time he moved, you followed. You weren't leading anymore. You reached the outskirts of a town by nightfall. Small, forgotten. No lights, no signage. The kind of place systems overlook or archive. You stayed outside, set up in a drainage ditch overlooking the only road in. You watched one vehicle pass in for hours. Old pickup, single driver, no anomalies. Duke didn't react. That was your green light. You moved into town just before dawn. You took the first structure that made sense. A closed hardware store. Thick walls. Limited entry points. Inside, dust lay undisturbed. No recent activity. You barred the door and sat with your back against it. For the first time since the cabin, you let exhaustion hit. Your hands shook. Not adrenaline. Aftershock. Duke rested his head on your knee. You put a hand on his neck. Felt steady warmth. They don't know how you do it, you whispered. Duke exhaled softly. You closed your eyes. Not to sleep, just to think. If Duke was the variable, then staying together increased risk. But separating meant surrendering the only warning system you had. They would come again. Not loudly, not violently. They would come with containment, And next time, they wouldn't underestimate the dog. You opened your eyes. Decision made. If Duke was the anomaly, then you wouldn't hide him. You'd force the system to observe up close, on your terms. Containment is a choice. You stayed inside the hardware store all day. Not hiding. Observing. Dust told stories if you let it. No new footprints. No air disturbance. No pressure shifts. The town was abandoned. It was paused. Duke slept lightly, not deeply, one ear always lifted. That told you enough. By afternoon, you found what you needed. Old county maps behind the counter, outdated, hand-marked. This place used to matter. Then it didn't. Systems don't erase places that are useless. They erase places that failed. You marked 3 exits, 2 dead ends, 1 route the maps didn't agree on. That was your path. Duke stood when you did. Stronger now, still limping. But his eyes were sharp again. You moved at dusk. Low, quiet, deliberate. The street never came on. Good. You reached the edge of town where the road dipped beneath an overpass. Concrete throat, graffiti half removed. Maintenance tags dated years apart. Someone still checked this place. You waited. Minutes passed. Then Duke stiffened. Not fear, recognition. You felt it a second later. The pressure, the sampling. You didn't mow. You wanted them to see you. The air thickened, sound dulled, depth flattened, figures resolved across the road. 3 this time. No jacket now. No attempt at normalcy. Bare silhouettes. One stepped forward. You're demonstrating adaptive behavior. It said. You nodded once. No words. Duke growled. The figure tilted its head. Continued proximity increases risk to the variable, it said. You finally spoke. Then stop coming. Silence. Processing. That is not within parameters. You tightened your grip on Duke's harness. Then changed them. For the first time, something like hesitation rippled through them. Not emotion, recalculation. They weren't used to negotiation. They were used to compliance or removal. You are contaminating the observation, the figure said. You smiled without warmth. So is he. The pressure intensified. You felt it digging, sampling memories, roots, decisions. Duke snapped, nodded them. At the air, the pressure collapsed instantly. The figures flickered. Stability lost. You ran. Not away. Through. Straight at the overpass. Duke matched you step for step. Behind you, the system scrambled to reassert control. Too late. You disappeared under the concrete. Depth returned. Sound rushed back. Reality slammed into place. You didn't stop until the road turned to dirt. When you finally slowed, Duke barked once. Sharp, clear. The first bark since the cabin. You laughed. It came out broken. They had rules, and now you knew how to touch them. What they can't archive. You didn't stop running because you were safe. You stopped because the world stopped following. The dirt road flattened into scrubland, then into nothing. No markings, no infrastructure. Just land that had never been worth monitoring. You collapsed behind a rise of rock and brush. Hard ground, real ground. Duke stayed standing, scanning, breathing steady. That mattered more than anything. You waited for the pressure to return. It didn't. No sampling, no compression, no sense of being measured. Just wind. Actual wind. You laughed quietly. The sound surprised you. It felt foreign, like a reflex you hadn't used in years. Duke turned and looked at you, head tilted slightly, not concern, curiosity. You rested your forehead against his. They lost the thread, you whispered. Not gone, just broken. That was enough. You moved again before dawn. Not because you had to, but because stillness creates patterns. You stayed off roads, followed dry washes and uneven ground, places that confuse tracking models. By mid-morning, you reached a ridgeline that overlooked miles of nothing. No towns, no towers, no signal bleed. Your phone stayed dead. Good. You set up a temporary camp. Not hidden, not exposed, balanced. Duke drank, ate, then lay down fully for the first time since the pulse. Deep sleep. You watched his chest rise and fall until your own breathing slowed. That's when you noticed it. The mark on his harness. A faint discoloration, almost like frost burn, but geometric, too precise. You touched it. The fabric resisted slightly, like it had been treated or recorded. They didn't tag him with hardware. They didn't need to. They tagged interaction. You understood now. Duke was special because he sensed them. He was special because he didn't react the way they predicted. Instinct without recursion. Loyalty without optimization. Protection without self-interest. You trained him to watch you. They never trained for that bond. You dismantled the harness piece by piece. Cut away anything that wasn't essential. Left the marked section behind, buried under stones. Let them chase the ghost of it. When Duke woke, he stretched, then shook himself hard, like shedding something invisible. He was lighter after. So were you. You didn't head toward civilization. Not yet. You skirted it, observed it from distance, watched how people moved, how systems breathed around them. Traffic lights, cameras, patterns. You stayed outside the grid. Days passed. Nothing followed. No voices. No figures. No pressure. That silence told you everything. They hadn't lost interest. They'd lost certainty. Systems don't fear threats. They fear variables they can't stabilize. You crossed paths with a ranger on the fourth day. Brief, uneventful, normal. Duke wagged his tail once. The man smiled and waved. That was the most dangerous moment of all. And nothing happened. By nightfall, you reached an old fire lookout, decommissioned, off the books. You climbed it slowly. Every step creaked, honest sound. At the top, you watched the stars. No drones, no satellites blinking in pattern, just sky. Duke sat beside you, alert but calm. You realized something then. They could observe you, track you, model you. But as long as Duke chose you over the system, they would never fully predict the outcome. You pulled out the notebook again. This time you wrote, not a warning, a record. If someone found us later, they'd know. You weren't erased. You weren't deleted. You stepped outside the frame, and you took the anomaly with you. Duke rested his head against your leg. You scratched behind his ear. The world stayed quiet, not because it was empty, because for now it was leaving you alone. And that was enough.